Well, we need to know a couple of things. Number one, we need to know how the world's premier law enforcement agency managed to lose 5 months worth of text. And what's also troubling is in the text we do have, they're discussing how to avoid text being captured and secured. So what's missing is important, but also what's there is important. It is manifest bias, not just against Trump, but against his kids, against his business interests. There's a text where they hope the Trump hotel fails. That is a level of bias that you rarely see and you never see from law enforcement officers. What's also troubling to me is this text that Johnny Radcliffe found last night about this secret society. Now, I have no clue what that means because that was not the phraseology I used, but it's the day after the election, and it's the same two people that were discussing a little bit later in the text the damage they had done with the Clinton investigation and how they could, quote, fix it and make it right.
What's out there? Hello everyone, it's Papa Bear. Today is Wednesday, February 21st, 2018, and this is the Late Night in the Midlands.com or LNMRadioNetwork.com, LNM Radio on your iTunes app or in your TuneIn app, and also on Paranormal Radio. And we're also at 101.7 FM, Columbia Talk. And today I'm going to break format just a little bit, and I'm going to talk about what's out there with Peter Kling today. Hello, Peter Kling. How are you?
Hello, Barry. I'm doing well. How are you doing today?
I'm fairly well, thank you. There's so much going on, I can't believe it. School shootings and fake news, and there is a coup going on that people don't see, of course, but people with eyes that can see do see it, and they know there is a coup going on within the government, and well, there's not much we can do except sit back and watch it happen.
Enjoy the show.
The show. Yeah.
I chuckle a little bit here. I suppose it's better to laugh than to cry over the situations that we see going on, because unfortunately, it's like we're in the Truman Show and everything is made for TV.
Yes.
And everything has an agenda and everything's been politicized, and you can't even watch a comedy show without having some sort of political agenda being pumped into your brain.
Yes, you're right. And it's always something. I mean,
yeah, it's always something. There's always something to distract us by. Yeah. I wonder how many people listening know that the president passed 2 executive orders to pretty much bring an end to child trafficking.
Human trafficking.
Human trafficking. Well, I look at the most vulnerable. But yeah, not just human trafficking, but espionage against the United States itself.
Right, but if you look into it and you look at the laws that were written that started back in 1913 and carried through, you will find that there's espionage built right into it. As a matter of fact, the people running the government don't even work for us. They're not part of it.
We'll get into that a little bit more later in the show. But the interesting thing about the executive order that Donald Trump had signed and put into law December 21st, interesting date.
Yeah.
You have the winter solstice here, and he puts an executive order into place just to smack him with, because it was part. The winter solstice starts the celebration of Saturnalia, which we've adopted into Christmas.
Yeah.
And without getting into the whole,
the celebration of the tree and all that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, different cultures will carry it on differently, but it all has to do with the rebirth of the sun.
Right.
And so whenever you have these holidays that are involved, which they've given Christian names to, there's not one religious holiday or so-called Christian holiday that has its roots in Christianity.
Maybe Passover, but that's not even Christianity. That's pre-Christian, isn't it?
That's not exactly. Yeah. That would be Hebrew anyway.
Yes, exactly. So you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
Every single one of the holidays that the church adopted came from pagan nations.
Right.
So if you're adopting the pagan holidays, what does that make you?
Right. And what
I don't
about the
care what you
symbols?
name.
What about the
Yeah,
symbols and pictures that you leave hanging around? Say, oh, that reminds me of this and that reminds me of that. It's like, no, it's got to be in your heart. You don't need pictures. These
and you
pictures
don't
are
need
idols. They're
symbols.
icons.
Yes, indeed they are. Yes, indeed they are. I wrote about that in Letters to Earth, especially the symbology.
Um,
And I
I
use it
Forgive me,
as
Peter. I didn't give you a proper introduction.
oh.
Bible scholar, been holding a Bible since he was 5 years old. The Einstein of the Bible, okay. And we don't need to get into your book that you wrote, Letters to Earth, but we can expand upon it if you don't mind.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm not here to talk about Letters to Earth. I'm just making the reference back there, and the
Right.
reason is Letters to Earth is really well, especially when it was first published. It was cutting, and it cut deep at the highest levels. A lot of people who are very influential in running this planet have read Letters to Earth, and I've received their wrath.
Hmm.
So we'll let it stay at that. But what I was getting to with the symbols, uh, if we saw a swastika today, we
Hmm.
would identify instantly that that is a Nazi symbol and it's pure evil.
Right.
However,
However,
if you're in the Far East,
uh-huh,
that same symbol is a
uh-huh.
holy symbol.
That's right. And where did Hitler get that symbol from?
The Far East.
The
But it
Catholic
goes back,
Church.
well, yeah, but it goes back even further than that. It's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
this morning, I had seen a picture of an antique bowl that was dated back, they claim, over 10,000 years, with that same symbol in the bottom of the bowl,
Right.
with
Yeah.
8 fish swimming around it.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, it's interesting. That symbol itself, it represents several things. It's a sun symbol. It's positive if it goes to the
Right.
right. It's negative if it goes to the left.
But the symbols have been hijacked. All of them have been. I don't know if you're still there or not. The symbols have been
But still,
hijacked. Um,
it
Trump, if you keep an eye on President Trump, look for the color of his tie. Okay. If his tie is
say here that
purple,
Hitler power so FDR.
I'm sorry.
Okay, do you want to say something?
Yeah. Whenever President Trump does a speech, look at the color of his tie. Okay.
Yes. Well, purple is he's sending a message, if I recall correctly.
That's correctly. Purple means there's a message being sent. And I remember one time he was wearing that purple tie and he stood in front of a podium and he held water, shaking his hands with both hands, and he took a drink. Okay, this
Yeah.
basically means you're going down. But it's also a message about this water thing too, because there's a lot of Nestle buying water, depriving people of water and things like that. There's a lot of stuff going on here. There's a lot of 4D chess, if you will. Okay, and believe me, I don't even pretend to know how to understand that stuff. I know that the symbols have all been hijacked by the elite, and Trump has taken them back. I'm talking about the Red Cross, you know what I mean?
Well,
All the symbols.
let's say that, and we'll go back to the swastika.
Yeah.
The people I guarantee you, the people in Germany in 1939 loved Hitler and they love the swastika
Uh-huh.
because it was a whole rebirth to them.
That's
I
right.
mentioned that Hitler and FDR were both elected in the same year. Well, they weren't elected, as you know, they're selected.
Right.
And they're both put into power. And
Right.
what were they given? The United States at that time,
Money.
yeah,
They were given
lots of
money
it.
to rebuild,
Exactly.
to start their revolution, their industrial revolution. Okay, and that's exactly what we did, and exactly what Hitler did. Okay.
Absolutely. And we geared up for war. What most people have no clue about is the TVA project. This was a project that was put into act under Woodrow, under FDR, and it was to build all these power plants down in the South, regenerate the South, give the people in the South something to new jobs and new lives and everything.
Yeah.
Those power plants were built for one reason, actually two. The largest aluminum processing plant in the world is in Alcoa, Tennessee, which is just outside of Knoxville to the southeast. And the largest power consumer, Oak Ridge Laboratories, which is just west of Knoxville.
Yeah.
And so they needed massive amounts of power to refine aluminum, because it takes a huge amount of electric to turn aluminum from ore into an actual usable metal. And with what they were doing with gathering uranium for the nuclear bombs that they were producing, that was also sucking up huge amounts of electricity.
Yeah.
So you've got Oak Ridge Nuclear Laboratories on one side of Knoxville, and you've got the world's largest aluminum manufacturing facility on the other side, all surrounded by, I think at that time there were 22, 23 dams that were powering that operation. So think of the planning that had to go into this in order to gear up for the next level of war that they were leading us to. And you're right, both in the United States and Germany.
See, the thing is, they've taken the last 100 years to actually turn this place into an oligarchy, where you've got most of the business owners who have infiltrated government, and they're all dual citizens. Well, not all of them, but a large portion of them are dual citizens, which is a conflict of interest in itself. And I mean, they've taken 100 years to pull it. Time doesn't mean anything to them. The thing is, how can you undo 100 years in 8 years or 4 years or even a year? You know what I mean? You've only hit the tip of the iceberg, and it's so thick and infiltrated. You've got a heavy battle behind you, and the only thing that's keeping Trump alive, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, all right, he has his own bodyguards, and Secret Service is there basically to carry coffee.
Yep. Now, let's, I had read that, maybe about a month ago, a little bit more, that Trump had his own security team.
Yes.
And I was like, now that makes sense. And the head of his security is one of his oldest friends. He's an ex-New York City cop. Yeah. And when he gave the State of the Union address, I was watching his security people more than I was watching him. And there's one guy who leads him in, and the same guy who leads him back out. and he is watching everybody. You watch his eye movements, and he is constantly scanning the room. So at least what's in forward. Of course, he's not turning his head and looking back. Somebody else has got the back end. But let's see. John F. Kennedy gave the Secret Service their job, and we'd see how he wound up. And the same thing happened with Bobby. Because when you're a presidential candidate, the first thing that they do is they assign you a Secret Service team. Now, interestingly enough, the Secret Service that we have here in the United States was adopted probably through Operation Paperclip and came from the Secret Service, the SS, the hated SS of the Nazi Army, which is actually a control group for the Vatican.
Yes. And
therein
brings National
us to today's
Zionist.
subject.
National Zionist.
Yes.
Nazi. Okay.
Yes. Now,
which included the Bolsheviks.
Well, that's the other side of the coin. The other side of the coin.
Right.
The prophecies are very clear about what happens to, quote, Babylon the Great, which is organized religion. When you read, and you got 2 chapters that are dedicated to its destruction. I'm talking 2 chapters in Revelation are dedicated to the destruction of religion. Now, It's called Babylon the Great for a reason. When we go back and look at the historical account, you can't find this in the scriptures. You got to go dig in history, crack open a book. You're not going to find it on a YouTube video anywhere. And if you do, I'll be highly surprised because I haven't made any YouTube videos about this subject. But we go back to the crescent of civilization, what is known as the Fertile Crescent. And this is where the story starts in Samaria with the Anunnaki, who gave humans religion and government to enslave them.
Yes. Yes.
And we get a whole backstory there, which is quite interesting. It's about 1,000 years older than the Bible. And so now everybody's run to the Anunnaki text as being the legitimate, the real explanation.
Well, see, if you look at the definition of religion, it says it means to rebind. Is what it is.
And that's exactly what happened. The people were bound to the government,
right?
And the people were bound to religion. So they had two major controlling factors in their life,
right?
And they were happy to have them. Even when you go back to the nation of Israel and the account of Israel, they wanted a king. They had prophets and they had judges up to that time, but now they wanted a king because all the other nations had a king. And they were warned against that.
But now this brings me back to the same thing I heard in the Senate here a couple of weeks ago, or in a hearing a couple of weeks ago, okay? It says, we're victims of our own successes, okay? That was the quote. And this comes back to the religion, okay? And the reason why I say this. We're victims of our own successes. Religion, first of all law is based on religion, okay, based on the Bible. All word definitions come from the Bible, okay? And no one can take away your religious beliefs. No one can take that away from you, what your religion dictates to you, as long as it doesn't harm anyone else. Okay, as long as it's within the realm of the Ten Commandments. How about that?
The United Nations says that everyone has a right to worship the way that they wish,
That's
provided it does not cause a problem with public security.
That's right.
In other words, like if you strap a bomb onto your back and run into a Starbucks and yell some phrase and set it off, that goes against the United Nations rules of freedom of religion.
Well, yes, but you have human concerns too. I mean,
yes,
there are responsibilities.
So by the United Nations' own dictates on freedom of religion,
right?
Any religion any violent act carried out in the name of that religion violates the United Nations sanction.
Yeah.
And then, therefore, is not legal to exist on this planet.
Any crime committed by religion, yes. I'll go along with that.
It's interesting. Go look it up in the United Nations Charter, and you'll find that it's under freedom of religion, and I believe it's Article 1, Section 2. Is where you'll find that information.
Right.
But when we go back to ancient Samaria, it all starts there. And in Samaria, they encouraged the people to worship whatever they wanted. They had the big gods, the god of the sun, who was actually King Nimrod. He was the human god of the sun, just like all of the pharaohs were the sun god over in Egypt. You had his wife Syrianus, who was actually a prostitute. She was a real prostitute. Nimrod was coming back from one of his conquests, and he stopped in an inn. This is according to the historical record. And she plied her trade, and he was so taken with her that he took her back to his kingdom and eventually made her queen. Yeah. The historical account says that she had him killed during the Saturnalia holiday.
Yeah.
Interesting. There's actually two stories. One's been cleaned up, but the original account says that they used to raise a lamb from the beginning of the year, and when it came to the time for this celebration, they would literally rip the lamb apart in an orgy, and they would consume its flesh raw.
Wow.
And one year, Seriamus had them substitute Nimrod for the lamb.
Uh-huh.
And see, this was all part. The Anunnaki knew what happened in Genesis. They knew what happened, what the edict in Genesis 3:15 was all about.
Right.
And when we look at the account historically, this is the second alien invasion of Earth, the first being by the Watchers back during the time of Enoch, which is all recorded within the book of Enoch. It has a minor add into the scriptures. This is pre-flood. We have more information about Noah and the flood at that time.
Right.
Not as much, about a chapter's worth of information about what was called the sons of the true God saw that earth women were hot.
Yeah.
And so they came and they took wives for themselves. The book of Enoch goes into a lot more detail, and it's actually a fantastic read.
Yeah.
It's almost science fiction. If you didn't believe it, you would say, wow, this is a great science fiction story written over 2,000 years ago.
The Enoch? Yeah.
Yes, Enoch.
Yeah, this is a good book, yeah.
So we have those same controlling factors with us today, the exact same controlling factors. And what we find is how the Sumerian religion was put together. That was the basis for what is now the Catholic Church.
Right. Yeah.
You know, Constantine didn't found the Christianity, so to speak.
No.
What he did was it made a political move before his death, which brought less dissension within the Roman Empire. And so he basically paid off a lot of bishops to turn around and put the biblical canon together, and they turned it into they actually took Mithra worship, Mithra is called also the pagan Jesus.
Uh-huh.
And they said, this is who we are worshiping as the Christ, as the Messiah, as the one who died for your sins.
And you see, that's the thing, that the Catholic Church is Old Testament. It's pre-Christian. It's not Christian. It's pre-Christian.
Well, yeah, and that's why, you know, they cherry pick scriptures and say it means this, it means that.
Well, that's why they perform their mass based on the Old Testament. And if they still had a synagogue or if they a temple, they would be sacrificing, but there is none.
Well, there's none that we know about. How's that?
Well, not officially.
You know, when you go back and look at the Ten Commandments, actually just the first 5.
Yeah.
The church cannot live up to any of them.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
You must have
start
no
with
other
the first
God.
2. You start with the first 2 and you're done.
Yeah, pretty much. You must have no other God before me, and you must not make a graven image of or any likeness of me.
Bang, Mary.
Yeah, all of a sudden Mary's deified. Well,
yes.
She's the mother of God. That's exactly what Seriamus was.
Statues, pictures, crosses.
After Nimrod's death, Seriamus becomes pregnant. Obviously not by Nimrod because he was dead. She was a whore.
Right.
And she became pregnant. And she said, oh, this is Nimrod incarnate who has come back to be with his people. Uh-huh. And she became the mother of God. Uh-huh. The Hebrew name for the child is Tammuz. And so Seriamus becomes not just goddess of the earth, but she's goddess of the moon and goddess of the stars. Uh-huh. And so we get more of a description within Egyptology where the pharaoh went to be with his star god brothers when he died, and so it was this constant rebirth, and it's the same basic teaching that's just been modified and recalculated and classified and fed to the people down to today. Now, the interesting thing is, we have a very interesting movement that's going on because we have people around the planet that are rejecting religion because they see it for what it's worth. Mm-hmm. But they're kind of lost, and they say, well, you know, Okay, the classic line is this. Yeah, I'm Catholic. You ask somebody what religion they are. They say, I'm Catholic. Oh, when's the last time you've been to church? Well, I didn't say I was a good Catholic.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, right. But
Wait a minute, only good Catholics go to church? No, maybe the good Catholics don't go to church because in Revelation, the 18th chapter, it says, get out of her, my people, if you do not want to share in her sins and plagues.
right.
So,
And when you're looking at the history of how things were put together in the governments and this stuff worldwide, if you really want to think about it, yes, the United States is the last bastion of freedom. We missed it. We missed the boat. We've screwed it up. People have forgotten that the government doesn't give you rights. The government protects those rights, okay? They're not given to you by them. That's right. They're supposed to protect those rights, okay? They're voting on whether or not to protect that right for you, okay?
Inalienable God-given rights.
That's correct. The government does not give you your rights. They are inherent. They are given to you by your creator, whoever you want to call that, okay? It's not government. Government did not create you.
And this brings, I'm going to close out this one thought. We're going to go into the next. This brings us to
We're going to have to do the next thought after the break.
Not a problem. We'll take our break. When we come back, we'll talk about this spiritual awakening that's happening. And how are we on time there, Papa Bear?
No, keep going. Just go ahead and do your spiel and lead us kind of halfway into the break, and I'll take it from there. How about that?
Sure. We have this spiritual awakening where people have kind of like come out of the church, but they don't know what to do with themselves. It's like, what do we believe? And we start looking toward things like, okay, we have to kind of fend for ourselves here. I still believe in God. I know that there is a God, but now these aliens are here and they're saying that they're going to help us out. And then we get all this other backstory and it just starts getting more and more noisy. And the one thing that we don't rely on because it's been hidden from us, one of the biggest secrets that has never been told to humans is who we are. We are the children of the Creator. We are the children of Yahweh. And when we start to draw that power, we start to become more powerful. And that's the last thing they want us to know is how to draw that power. And it all has to go back through prayer and meditation. And so there's the awakening that's starting to happen. People are starting to become more aware that we have to be responsible for ourselves, and through prayer and meditation, there is a spiritual Christian movement that's kind of unorganized. We look for answers. We know the government doesn't have it. We know that religion doesn't have it. And so we're constantly searching and looking for logical answers. And that's why the things that I say make so much sense. It's logic. It's not based on religion. I never had to unlearn religion because it was never taught to me.
Right.
From my earliest years, I was told religion was a scam and a racket. Never get involved with earth religion or politics.
Yeah.
Now, why the political end? You see, and this brings us back to what we were talking about earlier, where both Hitler and FDR were given the finances to go do their thing. Now, there's two controlling factors that we have over our government. And when we go back to 2015, we can see those two controlling factors standing in the Capitol. In March, it was Benjamin Netanyahu standing before the Congress telling our Congress what they needed to do. And in September, it was the Pope.
Yeah. Well, we're going to touch on that too after the break here. You are listening to What's Out There. This is L&M Radio Network. Quick 3 minutes, go grab yourself a bite to eat or a quick drink. Water the porcelain, whatever it takes. We'll be right back.
There are days that the red pill is bitter in my stomach, but I can't get it back out. I think because I have to. I speak because I have no choice. I walk through this dark age we're in with open eyes. Listen to Open Eyes on latenightinthemidlands.com. And together, maybe we won't stumble and fall.
The L&M Radio Network offers a chat room for you, the listener, to connect with others whom are interested in the topics and guests that the L&M Radio Network brings to you. During the live shows, the hosts will even visit the chat room and chat with you, the listener. Click on the big red Chat and Listen button at the top of the website and join us. No subscription is needed at either lnmradionetwork.com or latenightinthemidlands.com.
Why subscribe to Late Night in the Midlands, you ask? Well, I'll tell you why. Late Night in the Midlands covers everything, and through the thousands of expert guests who have joined Michael Vera on his show, come pieces of the big puzzle, which started many years ago. Michael and his guests reveal information dating back to the beginning of time. To this very moment, Michael Vera not only brings you the best guests with the best information, but Michael is not afraid to call out those who are less than honest. You see, in this day and age, we need a radio show we can count on and a radio host we can trust to expose the truth one show at a time. So become a late nighter and subscribe now. Talk radio like no other. Late Night in the Midlands, bringing the truth back to talk radio.
Do you need toner for your Epson, Hewlett-Packard, Canon, Brother, Apple, or Sharp printers? Look no further than Laser Technologies. In business for over 20 years, they offer the lowest prices on toner on the web. They can also repair your laser printers and toners fast and easy. Call their expert staff today at 561-792-9600 or email us at service@laser-technologies.com for all your toner needs. All toner is shipped nationwide. Why wait? Get the lowest prices on toner. Call or email us today.
There is a better radio show, beyond that which is known to the people. It is a radio show more informative than others, and as timeless as infinity. It is the equilibrium between light and dark, between the sheeple and the paranormal, and it is heard at the base of man's ignorance and at the summit of his knowledge. This is the radio show of imagination, a show we call The Secret Teachings.
I think I'm attached to this song. It's called Psychedelic by Ben Sound, bensound.com. Where we get the music here. But this is what's out there, and we are on latenightinthemidlands.com and lnmradio.com. You can join us over there, chat and listen. Subscribe. Take access to the archives over there. Subscribe, or if a subscription isn't for you, give us a donation. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be here. We're 100% listener supported. And also, we have the app on TuneIn Radio, which would be L&M Radio Network, and also on the Paranormal Radio, Paranormal Radio app. That's the one right there, Paranormal Radio. And also at 101.7 FM, Columbia Talk. And like I said, Ben Sound. And today, of course, or like I said before, we are joined by Peter Kling, with Peter Kling. And We are talking about what's out there. Welcome back, Peter.
Well, thank you very much for having me back.
It's good to have you back. It's always good to have you. I met you at on Michael's show at L&M Radio Network. I've known you about 6 years now, and I've known Michael a long time. And this is it's really been a blessing for me, getting to know Michael and the people that he's been kind of involved with. I haven't met everyone, of course, but he runs a great show over there at Late Night in the Midlands. And he's on from 9 to 12 Eastern Time every weeknight.
Hey, just a quick heads up here. My computer's doing funny things. I don't know why. But should I get knocked off, just give me a minute and give me a shout back.
If you get knocked off, we'll work around it.
Yep, okay. Just wanted to give you a heads up. I was trying to close the window and it won't close.
Yeah.
And it's like stuck in the middle of trying to figure out what to do, and it doesn't know what to do. And I'm watching my mute button on Skype go on and off, back and forth, and I'm like, yeah, okay, this isn't going to end. Well, okay, it just cleared up, so maybe we're okay.
Okay.
It's still doing something, but anyway.
It's up to you. I mean, if you want to reboot, I'll go ahead and give you the time.
No. I think we're good. I think it may have fixed itself.
Before the break, we were talking about a spiritual awakening. And I did, well, like we mentioned during the break, people are realizing that meditation and prayer are the things that are the keys to understanding the power that you have. And you can't listen to all the noise that's going out there and listen to messages that God sends you or that the Spirit sends you. You have to sit down in silence and listen to it. It's like finding a watch in a haystack, okay? If you've got 100 people looking, or 50 people, or even 10 people looking, they're all making noise, you're never going to find it. Once they're all gone, you listen. When you hear the ticking, you'll find it.
Something that I do from time to time, this is just a tad off, well, same subject, but I'll go into a state of meditation, not deep meditation, but into alpha, where I'm, fully relaxed, and I become aware of my own body. In other words, you kind of feel the hairs on your arms, feel your skin, you picture and just feel certain parts of your body. And then I would just kind of like let my mind wander, and you don't want to fall asleep through this process because it wouldn't help. Right. But if you certain thoughts will come to your mind, and there'll be random thoughts of one type or another, just different things that you will think about. And what I've noticed is that certain subjects, certain topics will just pop into my mind, and all of a sudden I can feel just a tightness or a tension in my chest. I know that it's hit a nerve somewhere that has released a little adrenaline, and I can feel that pushing through even at the tiniest level. And so and some of those subjects I'm like, okay, that's not something I'm afraid of, not something I'm concerned about, not that I fear very much. I've been through too much to be afraid of very much. They're kind of what you would think are neutral thoughts, but the point is to start to feel the response that your body has, because a lot has to do with feeling. I bet you everyone that is hearing my voice right now will agree with this statement. I knew that was going to happen. Mm-hmm. If you knew something was going to happen, then why didn't you take precaution to begin with if it was something that you didn't want to have happen?
Exactly. The shortcut.
Yeah. You see, it goes back to, you take a shortcut. I love this story. I was driving over to a friend's house. It was bad weather, and I knew that there was going to be ice on the road somewhere. And so I figured I'd take the path most traveled. And most of the time I would take a shortcut, but there was a bad hill there, and it was notorious for black ice. And just before that shortcut, I get this vision that pops into my head, and I can clearly see this car bouncing off the guardrail and hitting me head on, coming across the road and hitting me head on. And I knew where that section of road was. I was going to be on it within 2 minutes. And I thought, yeah, okay, well, if I'm not there, it could never possibly happen.
Uh-huh.
Right? Makes sense. If you're not there, it couldn't happen. So I took the shortcut. Got to my destination just fine. I came inside, and I was going to a party there, and the gal who's giving the party was on the phone. She just hangs up. She says, "You're never going to believe this. Some folks that just left here 5 minutes ago hit black ice out on 01, bounced off the guardrail, and totaled their car out on the other side of the road."
Wow.
Exactly where I had seen it
Right.
happen to me. Only I wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
if we have this now, the thing is, how did we know it was going to happen? You see, that's the
Right.
question. How did we know?
Right.
What made us think that this was going to happen? There had to be a feeling, and that's it, the feeling that we get. And so when we're praying for something or we're meditating about something, we need to pay attention to our feelings because we're going to be getting messages.
Yeah. Oh.
So,
You know that feeling you get when, I don't know, when you hit the ground and your butthole puckers up, doesn't feel right. You know what I mean? Well, if you're driving down the street and you see a cop and you get that same feeling,
yep.
he's turning around.
Could very well be.
I'm telling you, he's turning around. They've noticed you. Every time that's happened to me, I've got that feeling, and every time I got that feeling, boop, the lights are on.
There you go. Trust your feelings.
And maybe it conveys a message to me different than it does others. But you know, I'll get that feeling, and I know it. If I get it strong, they spin right around. If I don't, I know they're looking.
Now, here's something for you to do. When you get that feeling, picture them going on their way down the road, headed toward Dunkin' Donuts or go get a bite to eat.
Yeah, right.
These aren't the droids you're looking for.
Yeah, right. Right. Well, you know what? They find out once they pull me over, I'm not the guy they're looking for anyway. They usually say, "Have a nice day," and I say, "Thank you very much. You have a nice day too." You know, and it's all very cordial. It's very cordial. It's quite I don't know, civil. You know, it's all mild. There's no tension, none at all.
I've taken the approach to become invisible.
Yeah. Well, come on.
Then you don't show up on their radar screen.
I'm surprised somebody hasn't stuffed their groceries in my car yet. There's so many of them. Come on, a silver Impala. How many silver Impalas do you see? You know, I mean, they're everywhere.
Anyway,
So now we've got the gray one. Anyway, back to where we were.
Yes, so let's trust our feelings on things. And now here's where we are. We're at a time in history that is unlike any other. And as we started the show off, there's a lot of things that are going on within our very government that we see bits and pieces of, but we don't see the real story.
Right.
You see, what we get to see is what I like to compare it to NASA, you know, the rocket program. I don't care whether we went to the moon or not. You know, that makes no difference to me.
Right.
But we saw fantastic rocket displays. We saw fantastic launches going off of Cape Kennedy. And back before Kennedy, it was Canaveral. You know, I remember as a kid watching these things. I've seen almost every launch right from Alan Shepard, the first Mercury space capsule. So, you know, I grew up during that time period. As a matter of fact, the first one that I saw was on an old Philco TV with a round screen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep, that's what my grandparents used to watch. And then eventually they got a color TV.
Yeah, we got one back in the mid-'60s. The first people on the road to have a color TV.
Yeah. So
we still had that party line.
I remember that.
Peter,
I was over at Aunt's house the first time I saw one. Yes, sir.
What I'd like to do, since I've got you on here, and we've got about 10 or 15 minutes or so, I'd like for you, if you would, share some insights with me. What to look for, what's going to be coming up,
Sure.
what you see coming up, and what to look for, if you would, please.
Absolutely. I talked about this in the first segment, where we saw two powers that were controlling our government: Benjamin Netanyahu and the Pope back in 2015.
Yeah.
They also control the banking system. When I say they, not Netanyahu and the Pope, but the organizations that they represent.
Right.
And that is both the Zionist and the Jesuit organizations. The Pope that we have is an illegal Pope because he's a Jesuit, and by Catholic law, a Jesuit cannot hold the office of Pope. So why did they vote in a Jesuit Pope?
Because there are two riders on the same horse.
Yeah, we get to that point where we go back to the Knights Templar. There were two riders on that horse, and they invented the banking system, and they control it today.
Right.
And they control the government. Now, if you know anything about the history of the United States, the reason why this country was set up to begin with was, and why there was a separation of church and state, is because our founding fathers knew enough that once the church created monarchies. And so if the church got involved in U.S. politics, eventually they would turn the United States into a monarchy. And indeed, that's what happened, starting with Ronald Reagan. Reagan was a Knight of Malta. Bush Sr. was a Knight of Malta. Clinton was a Knight of Malta. Bush Jr. was a Knight of Malta. Yeah. And Obama had a letter of endorsement from the Knights of Malta. The Knights of Malta have replaced the Knights Templar because the Knights Templar were officially banned. However, they still do exist.
Now, Kennedy created Treasury money, too.
He attempted to anyway.
Yeah, and Reagan was going to do that, too, until he got the warning shot.
Yeah, so, they control, up until Trump, the Jesuits or the Vatican has controlled the White House. So they control 1/3 of the United States government. The way that our constitutional government is set up, they controlled the executive branch, and they controlled at least 50% of Congress.
Okay.
The other 50% of Congress is controlled by the Zionists.
Okay.
But now Trump broke the mold. You see, Trump has nothing to do with the Jesuits. However, I'm not going to say he's a Zionist, but there's a lot of Christians that are pro-Zion. And Trump did say we are moving it wasn't his doing. This law was actually set up back in the 80s, I think, 87, where it was to move the U.S. Embassy in Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Right. But in order to keep the law from going into become active, the sitting president had to sign off that it would not be active every 6 months.
Right,
it had to be delayed. So think about how many times it was delayed until finally Trump said, "No, I'm not signing that end. We're going to let it go into law." And that's exactly what he did. And then he signed it into law. So that's how that all came about. So it wasn't that it was Trump's decision. It was Trump's decision not to sign.
Right.
And so then it became law. And so we see something that is happening within Washington, and it started with Trump's collusion with Russia.
Yeah.
Oh my God! And then you find out that the reality that Hillary directly paid for this document, this Russian dossier that was totally false on Trump, and then they got FISA warrants based on this false information. And when they went before the FISA court to get the warrants, they hid the fact that they knew that it was false information, and they got their warrants to carry out their wiretaps and do their unmasking, and it went right up to President Obama, and they're all guilty of treason.
Yeah. Yes.
So that's now.
And there's a bunch of them. If not treason, which is actively warring against the country, sedition anyway.
Absolutely, but most of them are treasonous acts because they were spying on a presidential candidate and then trying to depose a sitting president. So there's your coup.
That's a coup, right?
Yes, there's your coup.
Yeah.
And so for that, they are guilty of treason. Now, interestingly enough, in that executive order that was put out on December 21st, people who use the government for personal gain are also liable under that bill, or I'm sorry, under that law. So all of these Congress people, a good one is like, where did Nancy Pelosi get her millions from?
Yeah.
Where did Maxine Waters get her millions from?
Somebody asked.
Yeah.
And, it didn't go too well either.
So,
yeah.
And they just ignore it because they don't have to answer. Why? Because they're basically serfs working for the Knights of Malta.
Right.
The problem is that the Knight of Malta has been thrown out of the White House. You see, and it's been replaced by the other rider on the horse. And according to biblical prophecy, what we can expect is all of this stuff to be exposed. 2 Thessalonians, 2nd chapter, goes into detail on how the man of lawlessness will be exposed. And people are gaining enough sense to say, hey, why are all these people who have been ruling over us for the last 50 years all above the law?
Right.
Why aren't they subject to the same laws that we are? Because they were Knights of Malta. And they are above the law. Now this is all starting to become exposed, and people are seeing it for what it's worth. And once it's fully exposed, and it's going to take time, this ain't like... well, just think of all the groups that Soros funded across the United States that are ready to go off at the drop of a hat.
How about this one? On March 3rd, 2018, the statute of limitations is going to run out on James Clapper's perjury in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Okay, and that's going to end any chance of the prosecution for him.
And what day was that?
March 13th. March 13th this year, the statute of limitations runs out on that case. Okay.
Well,
and what he said was they asked him, does the NSA collect any type of data on millions or hundreds of millions of Americans? And he said, no, sir, not wittingly. There are cases where they could inadvertently perhaps collect, but not wittingly. Well, that is a lie. They're taking it from everybody. They're taking it from you and me, and they're collecting it now from me.
The show's being recorded by the NSA.
He lied about a massive unconstitutional surveillance program and then admitted he made the untruthful statement. That would seem to satisfy even the most particular prosecutor in submitting a case to a grand jury, right?
Absolutely.
But this is Washington.
You see, and so these people get to do what they want to do.
They're lawless.
And they're above the law. But
Supposedly.
That is going to change as all this gets exposed. And it has to be exposed. The prophecy says this has to happen before the apostasy starts. Now, what's the apostasy? That'll take us into what is going on now over in Europe and here in the United States, but not to the same extent. Obviously, England, and now Angela Merkel actually came out and said this. She said that Germany will become an Islamic country.
Which is pretty much what Trudeau said about Canada.
Yeah, so wait a minute. What's going on here? Who's promoting Islam? Well, who invented Islam to begin with?
Yeah.
Go back and do the research. I don't care what any Muslim tells you. Go back and do the research. It was a product of the Catholic Church. It was based on the first apostasy, which was the Gnostics, which both Jesus and the apostles foretold would be coming.
And they worked together.
Yes. And so when you take the basic teachings of the Gnostics, which say, oh, Jesus never died, he was, somebody else died in his place, and he went on to father children, and those children wound up in France, and we got the Merovingian bloodlines, and you see, a whole scenario, a backstory starts, which has been embraced, and this was the first apostasy. So now what are we seeing? The product of that, if you go back and you read the Gnostic text and then go look at how Islam is based, it's based on the same basic principles. Who was smart? Who put them together? Didn't take a genius over at the, well, they didn't have the Vatican, but didn't take a genius within the Holy Roman Empire. You see, it was another means of controlling the people. And so now they've used that means of control under Sharia law, which is the extreme end of Islam, and they've moved it to Europe and the United States and Canada. The only problem is, guess what? We don't have a pro-Islamic president anymore.
No.
We actually have a, quote, Christian president who is not part of the Knights of Malta and hence not controlled by the Vatican. And so now the opening is there for the greatest country on the planet Earth to start the destruction of the Vatican.
Right, exactly.
And as it says in Revelation, the 17th chapter, her judgment will come in 1 hour. So it's a short amount of time. We're going to go into this eighth king, which is formed. And this is something that we're going to have to wind up saving for another show, because this eighth king that is formed, it has to do with the collapse of the petrodollar. And that eighth king may actually be formed between China, Russia, and the United States.
Okay, the end of the petrodollar. China unveils oil futures launch date. The start of trading open to foreigners will mark the end of years of delays and setbacks since China's first attempt at a domestic contract in 1993. Following December's final success test in a challenge to the world's dollar-dominated oil benchmarks, Brent and West Texas Intermediate, China will list local currency crude futures Shanghai on March 26th, according to the nation's security regulator. While some details of the contract, such as the size, or 1,000 barrels per lot, and grades have been released, other information, like the delivery depots for the crude, are yet to be announced. The intention is to release more details as the launch date approaches. If the date has been settled, then it's pretty close to a finalized contract, because at this point both Beijing and Shanghai Futures Exchange can't afford the startup to go wrong. Okay, so there goes your petrodollar.
Now, I had heard, and this seemed to be reliable because I heard about it on the 17th of January, that the release date for the gold-backed Chinese yuan was supposed to be on the 18th. And the remark was made that Trump asked Z to delay the move on the petrodollar.
Okay.
So whether that gets rolled out again in March or not is going to be interesting to see. But from what I can gather, and this was backed up by Karen Udis, she was an attorney for the World Bank. She said that the Chinese banking system is controlled by the Jesuits.
Yes, and it's coming very close now, according to Karen.
Yeah, so, this is going to be a very interesting little fight that they have going on here, and that's all part of what's going to be exposed. So all I can do is say stay tuned to this station and Late Night in the Midlands Radio, or wherever I might appear over the next couple of weeks or months. Things are going to get real interesting.
Things are going to get good because, of course, we've got the BRICS nations. This is all going to gold. And then your cryptocurrencies, everybody's mining them. Believe me, if you're an outlaw, you're mining them, okay? That's what's happening there. But your cryptos, I don't know about that. Anyway.
Papa Bear will have to do this again sometime soon.
We will. Stick with me, Peter. Don't go away, okay? This is what's out there, or that is what's out there. I'm Papa Bear. We'll see you next time.
Well, we need to know a couple of things. Number one, we need to know how the world's premier law enforcement agency managed to lose 5 months worth of text. And what's also troubling is in the text we do have, they're discussing how to avoid text being captured and secured. So what's missing is important, but also what's there is important. It is manifest bias, not just against Trump, but against his kids, against his business interests. There's a text where they hope the Trump hotel fails. That is a level of bias that you rarely see and you never see from law enforcement officers. What's also troubling to me was this text that Johnny Ratcliffe found last night about this secret society. Now, I have no clue what that means because that was not the phraseology I used, but it's the day after the election. And it's the same two people that were discussing a little bit later in the text the damage they had done with the Clinton investigation and how they could, quote, fix it and make it right.
What's out there?